Technology isn't just a part of our everyday lives anymore. It's become a frontier for global powers, with India right in the mix. So why not join the conversation? Take the Technopolitik Survey, created by researchers at the Takshashila Institution. It's just 10 simple questions, but your answers could help shape India's strategy in navigating the fast-changing world of high-tech geopolitics. Your voice matters, so let's make it heard. The link is in the bio.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. My name is Miheer Karandikar. I'm your host today. I'm a researcher at Takshashila interested in a variety of things in economics and public policy. Today I have with me Rishvanjas Raghavan, who is a researcher who has worked on a lot of issues in urban governance. Hi Rishi.
Hey Miheer, thank you so much for having me here.
Hi. So our topic today is the delays in municipal corporation elections all across the country. So if you might know that in India, municipal corporations are infamous for the election delays. Much of them have not had elections in the last 4 or 5 years. We'll talk about that in detail later. And so we are here to kind of unpack why, how, and we'll see what solutions there are for this in the future. But I think the first and most important question is, why should we care? So in 2024, urban areas accounted for 36% of India's population and 70% of India's GDP. Local governments, urban local bodies basically govern that, right? They provide us city dwellers with a lot of essential services that include water, sewage, health and education. So some of the most basic services. An average citizen living in the city has much more access to local officials than he'll have to state or union government officials, and you can interact with them more frequently because they address day-to-day issues, right? It has been shown that ULBs offer better public services and infrastructure than higher levels. They can attract more investment, talent to the city. They have improved resource allocation efficiency all across the world. However, to do so, they need to be able to respond to local demand. They need to have good accountability systems to deliver good quality services, right? So this is kind of the introduction to why urban local bodies are important. So now I'll come to you, Rishi. So why don't you first introduce yourself and then your interest in this topic and where it comes from?
Absolutely happy to, but yeah, I think one thing that goes without saying is that urban local bodies are extremely important when it comes to governing our day-to-day lives. Now, there may be some section of the population which is questioning, do we need this third tier of governance? Is urban local bodies, are they even necessary? Can we do without them? But I guess that is probably a discussion for a different time. But I think over the years, social scientists, public policy specialists, right from the makers of our constitution to all the civil society today has kind of unanimously agreed that you need local governance because there is some section of people's problems that you need the most local people to solve. For example, what's going wrong in my locality? If there is a budget allocated for my locality, where should that go? Someone sitting in the state capital or the national capital has no idea about that. You need, in my radius of 1 kilometer, if we have some funds sanctioned, where should that go? Now, only the people who stay there and the local elected representative from there will know maybe some area needs more expenditure on waste management and garbage disposal, whereas another area might need more spend on lakes rejuvenation in that area, whereas a totally different area might actually have more of a traffic problem. So I would then, if I was in that area, spend that money to make road signs better, make some policies on implement certain routes better, make things more pedestrian friendly. You get it? So I think it's kind of a no-brainer that local governance is super important. And I think that was my fundamental belief too. So you asked me to introduce a little bit about why I am interested in this. And that's where I come from. I am a Kannadiga, born and brought up in Bengaluru pretty much, apart from the 3 years that I stayed at Ashoka University where I studied some economics, finance, political science. So that was a very interesting time for me. I was in Delhi, so I also interned with a few political parties there.
Right.
I worked with someone from BJP, someone from AAP. It was a very interesting time. I was growing up, 18, 19 years old, cared too much about, what's happening, how can we make things better. So I had some raw enthusiasm at that point. So I think my interest in policy and politics started from there. And of course, I also did my GCPP from Takshashila at
Right.
that time, which also gave me a sense into the policy world. But as I went a little deeper into the world of policy and politics, I started realizing that, hey, I'm actually not a researcher or an academic in that sense. I loved the pursuit of knowledge, but I was very interested in knowing, hey, what can I do today that can solve something and make things a little bit better, however small.
Yeah.
So that's where I started approaching things. So I was in my, student government where I was, making some small residence life policies better, making the mess better, that kind of a thing. But that translated very quickly into my love for the city and wanting to make things better here. So I returned back to Bengaluru. I did my master's in public policy from National Law School, which was a 2-year program, and it was also during COVID that I was doing this, and I was involved with working on the ground, trying to make the last mile delivery of oxygen and vaccines and things like that better. Tried to work with BBMP and the local BBMP war rooms. In my ward, it was in fact non-existent. So I started understanding the extent of, I would say, lack in facilities when it comes to some of our local governance, infrastructure, and also the quality of people. I think there are always well-meaning people everywhere in all levels of governance, but I felt that there's just not enough. I don't know how you interpret it, but not a great quality of people, either elected representatives or bureaucrats who are working at the last mile service delivery. So then I started thinking about, okay, in my lifetime, if I want to do something and have some impact and change something, sure. I mean, I'm a nobody. You could be powerless, not coming from a very, either political or very wealthy background that you can do things for society. But I felt that, hey, if I can just think about my ward and my area and my city and see what we can, do here, make it better in a few ways, then, my time will be worthwhile. So that's where I approached things. So that's just an intro on how I got into local governance. And so I also worked with Bengaluru Navanirmana Party, which is a local city-only party, group of experts who have come together just to, improve the city. So I, spent some time working there on the ground, trying to understand people's problems, solving the smallest of problems. So long story short, this was my interest in local governance and urban governance. But I realized that my own city that I'm talking so much about and we are trying to do things in does not have an elected corporation today. And in fact, it's been, I've lost count, honestly. It's probably been 3-4 years, if not more, as we are, speaking, that there has been no elected corporation in the city of Bengaluru. We call it India's Silicon City and whatnot, such a huge contributor in terms of like GDP, budgets, roads, whole kind of bouquet of problems. Any problem that you would like to think about which a city can face, Bengaluru faces it. Yet we do not have an elected corporation, right? So that started getting to me a lot. And I was thinking about, how can this happen? I mean, isn't it so natural that if you're in a city, there's a corporation, there should be an election to it. How can an election be delayed endlessly, right? I started finding it so ridiculous. We, petitioned in the High Court. Many other people have been saying, do the election. The Constitution says that the election can't be delayed. It must be completed, before the term expiry. In some emergency cases, a maximum of 6 months can go by without a corporation in an election. So the Constitution says this. But then in Bengaluru, it had been 3-4 years and there's just no corporation election. In fact, we are almost going to be 5 years now, because the last election to BBMP was supposed to be in 2020 and that didn't happen, and we are now in 2025. So I started thinking about what is the problem here? How is this possible? But then there's something very interesting you mentioned in the intro, which is that we have heard of this in so many other places. That's what got me thinking. For example, Chennai had a whole 5-year period without a corporation.
That's a whole term.
It's
That's a whole
almost a
mayoral
whole term.
Yeah.
And then the new state government was elected, and then they conducted the
okay.
corporation election. And then I was just looking around in Delhi. Delhi is a different problem of its own. They tried to merge corporations, demerge corporations. In that process, they delayed elections. Then I started thinking, okay, is this a Bengaluru problem? Is this a Chennai problem? Is this a Delhi problem? Or is it an India problem?
Right.
Or is it only a big city problem?
Okay.
Is it also there in small cities? So that's what I started thinking about. And I tried to look for data that existed on just municipal corporation, elections. And there was no single source or single database which said, okay, these many municipal corporations are there in the country and this is how many elections. And
right.
So I think where the foundations of this kind of study that I took on, trying to understand irregularities in elections to urban local bodies. So this was my study. So I was at NLS, and my entire second year, I wanted to do a thesis that I was, passionate about, I cared about, which I thought was very impactful in terms of results at the end. So I think I set out to identify the extent of the issue. How big is it? How small is it? Is it there all over the country? Is it not? Is it just a few places? And why does it happen? Is there some pattern? Is there some reason? And what can be the solution? So I think that was what prompted my study.
Yeah, such a great introduction to you on the topic. But I mean, I'm from Pune, right? So I think this is not just a Bangalore problem or a Chennai problem. It's a India level problem.
Yep.
And there was a point in Maharashtra where there were no elected local bodies existing anywhere in the state.
Yep.
So you can't imagine there not being state elections, right? So when the five-year term ends, state elections have to be held. But you can say, urban local bodies, okay, one city doesn't have a local ULB, big deal. But there's not one city. No town in the state has an elected local body, which makes no sense. There's no outrage over it. There is no outcry over it. I met a person who filed the petition in the High Court challenging that there should be an election in Pune as well. But I mean, he won the case, but nothing happened.
Yeah.
So it's a big problem. So just a small question before you go into the results of your study is, why does no one care about urban local bodies? Does no one care about urban local bodies? If yes, why? Have they just been ignored in the country since independence, because someone in the higher up wanted an amendment, they just got an amendment? Is that the case? Or was there actually a grassroots movement that didn't follow through into a real force? But what's the bird's eye view on that?
Yeah, I wish I had an answer to this, but I think if we just zoom out a bit and think about the origins and foundations of the idea of self-governance in India, I feel like the roots are very strong.
Okay.
Right from our independence movement, a lot of the rhetoric, based on what I've heard, I've read, is that, look, we are the locals here, we know what needs to be done, and we need to self-rule, we need to self-govern. That was the kind of ethos on the basis of which the freedom movement itself came about. And if you look at constitutional debates, and right from the time that India existed as a country, and right from the time we adopted our constitution, in terms of intention, the constitution aimed to establish this three-tier governance. In fact, our concept of villages and panchayat system is very strong. What is that? That is also similar. It's like you're in a village, you take care of your needs, state and national needs are taken care of separately, but you take care of your needs locally. So that was, a very strong system that came about. So I think it's a mystery, or maybe not so much. After I've started getting into this, I think I have some answers which we will come to at the end. But in terms of intention of the folks who made our constitution and how we should function as a country, there was no lack of intention, or there was no intention to make urban local governance a D priority. But over the years, I think two parts to it. One part is that in terms of civic education, we have fallen short in the sense that your average person living in a big town or a city, maybe someone living in a panchayat, knows that because the panchayat system itself is so strong. They know there's a panchayat
Right.
election, it's going on, they participate, that kind of a thing. But when it comes to urban local bodies, the minute you're not a village anymore, you're like a bigger town, you're a city, the amount of education about this local governance is very low.
Okay.
Because the population gets bigger. So I have been on the streets of Bengaluru, just talking to people, figuring it out, whether they knew about the BBMP election, did they vote in the previous election, and many of them said, oh no, I had no idea about that election. So they were in fact living here, staying here, but they didn't know that there's a third election. They know about the national election when Mr. Modi comes and does his rally, or the state election when the chief
Right.
minister candidates come, and it's all over the news. But some amount of education in terms of just the citizens itself, knowing that there's a third tier of governance, knowing that there's a ward committee. How many people know that there should be a ward committee that happens twice a month on every alternate Saturday, where anybody, including me, can go and raise an issue, talk to the officials, get things resolved.
Right.
These are the kind of things that I started getting involved in, but I realized that the knowledge about this is super low. So that's one part of the problem. The next part is that the people who could have helped change this level of awareness are not interested. So it's a case
Right.
of misaligned incentives. So tell me who could educate folks about all of this? One you can think of is the media. But now, how cool is it for the media to talk about sewage or a drainage problem or smaller issues or a ward committee? I'm sure all media outlets may have good intentions, but it's something that just doesn't run. So again, that's a problem. Media is not talking about it, saying that, I mean, if I owned a media channel, I would flag it at your 8 p.m. prime time every single day that, hey, Bengaluru has not had a corporation election and that's affecting your day-to-day life, right?
Yeah.
But it's not cool, or for whatever reason, the media doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Who else could change that? Politicians and bureaucrats. But folks who are higher up in the order are interested in the lower elections not happening or people not knowing too much about it. Because in India, and this is again a larger issue, the amount, actually it comes down to the first part, right? The amount of education. If you ask someone, what is the job of an MP? And when I say someone, I don't mean someone who's uneducated or like someone, not at all. I'm telling you, if you went and asked a relative of yours who's probably done a degree, working in some like company, whatever that is, an average Bengaluru citizen or citizen of anywhere in the country, you ask them, what is the role of an MP? And what is the role of an MLA? What is the role of a corporator? They will not be able to give very specific answers to that. And part of this is because of the way that politicians work in India and how our things work. Because, see, what is the job of an MP is to represent my region in making of laws and policies and debate and share views. Whereas none of our MPs actually do that. Like at a national level, there's a BJP, there's a Congress. If there's a bill being passed, the chief whip is going to issue a whip.
Right.
And then they will come and say, you have to be present, vote on party lines. So there's no real representation, or the MPs are not involved in making laws. They make speeches sometimes, but then at the end of the day, there's a cabinet which is deciding what law to pass. Some bureaucrats come and write those laws.
Yeah.
So for an MP to be relevant, what do? They get into public welfare. So an MP who should have been attending parliament, making laws, representing your issue, thinking about the future of how your constituency should grow, that kind of a thing. Instead, they are installing drinking water plants and putting their face on it. They are trying to solve potholes.
Right.
Because it makes sense, right? Like if I am a citizen, I have an issue, I want to go to someone. I don't know the local corporator. I'll just go to the biggest guy I know and complain about it. And that guy benefits from actually solving those problems.
Because he gets my vote.
Yeah, he gets the vote, gets the mileage. So that MP is also not interested in letting you know that fixing potholes
is not
his job. Right? Because it's the easier thing to do.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, this is one, political relevance is one. And then lastly, the big elephant in the room, which is controlling the finances itself. Any MP or an MLA is interested in controlling the local finances as well. So right now, if there's no corporator, right, or no local elected representative, the state government representative and the MP of that area, they try to work directly with the bureaucrat who's there and try to implement the projects that they want. Maybe they get a cut out of it, maybe they don't. Lesser we speak about that, the better. But that is the way things work. So again, I think it was a great question on trying to understand, do people care about local governance or not? And we looked at it from people as in citizens, people as in people, politicians, media, and somehow it looks like everyone has some reason or the other to not care too much about it, right? So I think this is one of the things that keeps me up at night, and I'm sure a lot of other people, and we need an answer, better answer.
Yeah, we do. And hopefully your study and what you talk gives a kind of a solution. But it's true. And the state government, if you don't talk about that, has even less an incentive to care about municipal body elections, because when there is no urban local body, they are in control. And even if to some extent there is an urban local body, they are still in control, because a lot of the executive functions that a mayor should have or the standing committee of a city should have are actually controlled by the state government. And there's a weird mismatch of, the mayor or the standing committee of the corporators are actually answerable to you because you can actually go and approach them. But the real control is in the hands of the municipal commissioner, who is appointed by the chief minister of the state. So the mayor doesn't have the power, but he has the accountability. The municipal commissioner has the power, but he has no accountability. Or he's not accountable to the
people, at least.
Not a median citizen living in the city. So that's a really big issue. The urban local body finances are controlled by the state government. So they determine how much they should give to municipal corporations, how much they can spend. And there's a whole bunch of issues in property tax collection that municipal corporations face. They don't have enough capacity. So that's a whole different...
and in fact, this capacity, very interesting you mentioned it, also varies state by state.
Okay.
So for example, if you go to a state like Goa, I spent a week in Goa the last time they had corporation elections there. I wanted to understand what are candidates talking about, what is voters' mindset, what are the things people talk about. And in a place like Goa, functions of the corporation, the Panaji Corporation, for example, are even lesser. For example, even things like, garbage management, I think electricity, things like that, which were supposed to be under the local corporation as per the constitution. The constitution also has a schedule, I think it's 10. I'm now, my research days are about a few months behind, so I'm forgetting the exact one, but there is a list of 18 items which local urban bodies are supposed to be given the power to legislate on and control, work on. But in different states, there's different levels of power that's taken away. We are sitting in Bangalore, so if we talk about Bangalore, the BWSSB managing water sewage is now taken away. It's separate. The BESCOM, which is the electricity board, has now been moved into a separate corporation. Again, an appointed commissioner runs it. They report to the state government. Same for garbage. There's a lot of talk now about removing that too. So then my question is, what will a corporation do if all the things that it's supposed to take care of, one by one, we are giving those functions away to different bodies and different state government wings? Then it's kind of, you're slowly decentralizing it. And some states have withstood this pressure. Your state, for example, I think Maharashtra, relatively compared to the other states, at least the corporations have a greater capacity in terms of implementing things. They have higher budgets, a little more autonomy. But I think the key thing to note is that it varies state by state. So that is also something that could be fixed. So maybe when we talk about the results, we talk more about that.
So here we are expecting states to give away powers that they have and also decide how much finances they get, what the municipal corporations control, and very less likely to give away the powers that they have to the municipality. Right? They always want to politics without romance sells us. This was the first of 2 parts of the episode. In the second, we dive deep into municipal corporation election delays, what influences them, and how we might be able to solve them. To listen to the second part, tune in to All Things Policy tomorrow. See you then.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.